So here's where the controversy comes in. Engineers doing shop drawings, that's what has been coined as kind of what this procedure is. Engineers are really good at checking shop drawings, but I've seen the model you're sending me, and there's probably every fabricator and every detailer in here has had some flavor of this where, I think engineers have done it to themselves in the interest of demonstrating that they're doing some of these things and sharing their model data so they can put on their marketing brochure and their whatever that they shared model data. They just kind of take something, they throw it over the fence and say, yeah, we shared our model data. But, you talk to enough people, you find out the models don't close, they're not accurate, the roof's not sloped, the terraced areas aren't dropped, there's very little information, there's no secondary information. Member sizes might not match with what's on the drawings. The grid dimensions don't match with what's on the drawings. And now you're telling me you're going to do shop drawings from that? Right? I mean, that makes... I can see where the fabrication community and the detail community would be a little bit concerned about what they'd be getting from an engineer. That's not what I'm proposing here. So my suggestion, if the engineer's in the room, that you need to find a partner, a detailing partner to work with. We know a lot about checking shop drawings. I didn't know the first thing about detailing. I still don't know a lot about detailing. And what I see scares me, and I know I would not want to be doing it myself. You need to find somebody that's got superior knowledge of this process and what the fabricators are looking for. I might have been able to do this 15 years ago when things weren't quite as sophisticated as they are now, but there's a lot of things that can go wrong here, and a good detailer is going to keep you out of trouble. So speaking of trouble, let's talk a little bit about liability and what that means for the engineer and what we're kind of doing here. So in the traditional process, you got the owner, pays the architect, pays the structural engineer. These are pretty much the way things work. Fabricator works under the contractor, detailer works under the fabricator. What's important here is if the detailer makes, at the end of the day, the fabricator is responsible to the contractor for the building, and it's for the steel building in its entirety, if you will. If his detailer makes a mistake, contractor doesn't want to hear about it. He's not going to hear about it. It's not his problem. It's fabricator's problem. He said, Joe, I just hired you to erect this building as shown in the construction documents. End of discussion. So whatever quibbling goes on here for whatever issues go on, nobody else's business, steel goes out to the job site. If the structural engineer hires a detailer, he's now come out from underneath the fabricator. In this particular case, the contractor hires the engineer who has hired the detailer. Contractor's a little bit on the hook for what the engineer is providing for shop drawings because it's now kind of not underneath the fabricator. It's a little more exposed than he'd like, and it's not the fabricator's problem anymore. It could be, but it's not in the sense that it was on the previous slide. So in this case, like a design bid build, the contractor hires the engineer and the engineer hires the detailer. Another scenario, which is the one we did with design build on the 1.5, I guess you'd say, where we worked for the fabricator. Fabricator doesn't have quite as much leverage of making the detailer do what he wants if things don't go right. Now all of a sudden, fabricator's paying me, and I've got to answer to the problems he's having with my detailer. So it puts me in a lot different position than I would be under the secure blanket of the first slide, right? Third scenario we thought of was offering this as a service from the design team. And pretty much the discussion we've had with the architects about this process, the first question out of their mouth is, who are you getting paid by? Because they don't want it to be them. Because that's more risk for them, and they don't have any way of going to their insurance company and explaining what we're doing here. So I don't see this happening anytime soon, at least for the architects that we work with. So that's the liability from the risk of having a detailer work for you standpoint. So sharing accurate model data. If you're faking it, if you're not linking to your analysis program, if you're not updating your 3D model, if you're changing your 2D plans to be right but not updating the model, or throwing a typical detail that says, here's my typical brick lintel around the building, typical everywhere, and not providing that in your model. If your grids don't close, or if your column grids in your analysis program don't match up with what's on the plans, it's what I call faking it. This concept will be a quantum leap. This is not, you do not want to do this. You have to have really good model discipline to do this, and you have to really have something good to share. The name of the game here is to make steel more competitive and to squeak all the efficiency out of it we can. Waivers. The short answer for me is no. Think about what it means when somebody says, here's my information, but you have to sign a waiver that says you're going to double check everything I did, and I'm not responsible for what I'm giving you. How can we move forward if nobody's willing to take responsibility for what they're doing? So Jim's in here somewhere. I've never asked him to sign a waiver. He doesn't get one from us. There's kind of two ways to look at it. You can, in your office, you can decide to find ways to protect yourself. You can ask the question, how do I protect myself so something doesn't go wrong? Or you can ask yourself, how do I make this work? And if you've ever been down those kinds of exercises, the how do I make this work makes things go a lot better. And that's how we kind of deal with it in our office. It's not a how can we get this out the door and get this behind us and get on to the next project. It's how do we get it right, because we're in a position where we need to share this information with the detailer. Don't focus on the 2D drawings. A lot of these the BIM packages have gotten to where the plans become this innocent byproduct. So we're taking that old 2D effort we used to do, focus on the 3D, and then the 2D plans become this innocent byproduct. And engineers are going to have to step up to the plate here. We see everybody's under market pressure for fees, and what everybody tends to do is they either figure out how to do it quicker, or they don't do as much work as they did before, so they can compete at that lower fee structure. And the other way to look at it is do something different that helps the industry, makes things different, makes things better, makes steel a better construction material, and figure out how to do it right so that we can all get more steel buildings to work on. So the other thing we're going to be responsible for if we go down this road is the fabricators' preferences. And they've all got naming conventions, particularly here on the East Coast. Everybody's got their favorite way of doing stuff. And because you've hired the detailer now, you're responsible for incorporating those preferences and shop efficiencies into the shop drawings to make this process good. There's a lot of things. But trying to do that still leverages all of the efficiencies that the fabricator has. Does this open the door for a monkey business by the fabricator? Well, I don't like this process. I don't think this process is a good process. So I'm just going to sit back and wait for the shop drawings to come out, and then I'm going to find reasons why it doesn't work in my shop, and I'm going to go back to somebody, and I'm going to ask for a recovery because I assumed it was what I was getting. The fee that I gave everybody was based on 100% efficiency through my shop, my way, and it only got to 95%, and I had to spend more time, and therefore I'm due recovery. Yep, I think that opens the door for that. I don't think that's a long-term good thing. I think the market will not tolerate that down the road, in my mind. But it's an issue, something you need to think about. You need to choose your detailer wisely. This is not an easy task. It kind of looks good on paper, and I want it to sound good, but it's not that easy. And as an engineer, we needed to find a detailer who realized this wasn't going to be easy and not just trying to cram something out the door, knew that there were going to be some ups and downs, somebody with a lot of enthusiasm for technology and change, willing to change, willing to try to find a better way to do some stuff. That's thorough, insightful, helpful, team player, all those things you like to have. It's kind of like finding your wife. You're in bed with this person and you all need to be on the same page. Conversely, for the detailers in the room, you need to find an engineer that's doing the things that kind of make this process work. You need to find out if your engineer is faking it and just wants to use this as a way to say, oh yeah, we're doing all this stuff, because everybody gets in trouble if this isn't working well. Is there more risk in what we're doing here? You're responsible for incorporating the fabricator's preferences. There's a commitment to early coordination to reduce and eliminate RFIs. And if you don't think that takes a lot of time to get that out of an architect, we know how much time it takes after the fact. It does still take time even during design. You got to be disciplined with your modeling. There's a risk of being out from under the fabricator now to where you're exposed with that exposure. So yeah, there's a lot of risk here. Can I get paid for it? That's usually the second question. Most opponents of new ideas are from Mississippi or from Missouri. You have to show them, right? It's a show me state. That has been a little bit of the challenge here. We've been talking about this with some of our contractors and architects for a while. You leave and they say, great idea, and you can't really seem to get over the hump until the last 3 or 4 months here, when we've got case studies to talk about and how they went and that they went well. It's sort of in our mind, kind of when we look back at the chart in the beginning with the whatever was yellow, orange and red and purple, whatever it was, there is some time that we're saving in the shop drawing review process that we can kind of cheat and say, well, that comes back into design. But there's a lot of effort required here to make this happen. And what we have found, until we can get a couple of these under our belt, is they look at our fee, which includes the detailer, some connection design for the oddball stuff, some extra fee for liability on our part, right, that we can't go back to the architect for. And on all 3 projects, they came back and said, well, that sounds about right for what the detailer fee that we would normally get. And what I haven't been able to demonstrate is we're not doing what your detailer was doing. We're doing something totally different. And the comments we've gotten back from all 3 fabricators have kind of proved that out. So short answer is yes, we can get paid for it eventually. You got to do a couple of them until where you can really show that what we're proposing here actually works. So kind of in summary, what we've tried to do here is leverage the efficiency that technology is allowing us to have now in BIM and shorten the issuance, if you will, of the fabrication package by bringing as much of this back into the design phase as we can, making the changes when they're the least painful and adjustments, and shorten this whole process down to make steel buildings quicker and more efficient. And with that, there's the PDH code again, and we have 1 minute and 30 seconds. So if anybody has questions, I'm sure there are a lot I was going to try and finish before that, but go ahead.